clinics.
James Reynolds reporting there from Gaza. Well, I'm joined in the studio now by Hannah Weisfeld, who is director of Yachad, which is a pro-Israel group and has supported an online campaign for peace in Gaza. Welcome, thanks very much indeed for coming in. I imagine, given that you were very disappointed when the three-day truce didn't develop into a longer ceasefire.
Yeah, there was obviously great hope that we would have a window of opportunity to not even talk about a three-day truce, but a longer-term peace plan. And unfortunately, what happened yesterday morning was a resumption of the violence with rockets that came over from Gaza and an Israeli response. I think that the main thing now is how we reinstate that ceasefire, and there's conflicting reports coming out this morning and last night from Cairo as to whether they are close or far away from it. But I think the real question is what happens the day after the ceasefire is reinstated.
You represent three organisations, a number of Jewish people, Israelis. What has been the response, do you think, to yourselves since the failure of this ceasefire?
Well, the failure of the ceasefire is very new. What I would say is the organisation I represent, Yachad, which is a pro-Israel, pro-peace movement of British Jews, has, for the past 2 weeks really been calling for an urgent ceasefire and an immediate return to long-term negotiations, on the basis that actually there is really no long-term military solution to this conflict and there has to be a political solution. What's been very interesting for us is that there has been a huge amount of support inside the Jewish community for what we're doing, and a huge number of British Jews who are saying we have to get behind peace, that we cannot keep on returning to this conflict every 2 years.
There's also a huge amount of support within Israel for this conflict, for the action that's been undertaken by Netanyahu's government. I mean, what's your stance? Do you think this should never have taken place in the first place?
There is a reality that Israel has a right to defend itself against rocket attacks.
Right, but should this conflict have taken place?
Well,
I
think the question is, what is going to bring what we all want long term? So the question is, what is going to bring the moderation that I believe most Israelis, most Palestinians and most supporters of Israelis and Palestinians outside of the region want? And what I would suggest is the fact that this is the third round of this conflict in the last 6 years would suggest that actually a military solution is not working. And unless we can find a way to bring those two parties together, Israelis and Palestinians, and create a long-term political solution in which both peoples have safety, security, self-determination that they deserve, then we're not going to get out of this current round of violence, or we might get out of it in a short-term way, but we will find ourselves having this conversation again in 2 years' time.
Given all that, though, it would follow, wouldn't it, that actually Israel shouldn't have gone in the ground again to Gaza this time round? Because if you're saying a military solution isn't the way forward, why bother? Why bother killing those 1,000?
I think there is a reality inside Israel today that people are incredibly scared. They're incredibly scared. There has been an enormous amount of rocket fire that's come over the border, and actually, the reaction of many Israelis is, I want peace restored. I want peace immediately restored, and it's very difficult, actually, I think, in a short-term conflict for people to necessarily think about the long term. What we're saying as British Jewish supporters of Israel is that actually we have to get behind the long term. We have to get behind the long term. We have to build support, politically, in civil society for the long-term peace that we all need. The problem we have today is that, and we had this with the protests outside, that are going on right now outside the BBC studios. We have a situation where in the short term people tend to choose sides, and they say, okay, I'm choosing the sides of the Palestinians against Israel, or I'm choosing the sides of the Israelis against, rocket fire. And actually what we're saying is it's not about choosing sides. This is not a football match. This is a conflict that needs resolving. If you care about the future of the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, and if you care about peace, actually what we need to choose is peace. And civil society needs to stand up and say we need to find a way to get behind long-term peace. Jewish communities need to say it. Palestinian diaspora communities need to say it. What we're trying to do is say to the Jewish community, we've got to move beyond the rhetoric. This conflict is so much about rhetoric now, and it's got to be about peace.
Okay. Hannah Weisfeld, very good of you to come in. Thank you very much indeed. You're watching BBC News. A reminder of our headline.